Just a few months ago, Zack Snyder made history by releasing his very own cut of Justice League, which retained the tone, theme, and vision that Warner Bros. Had passed on when replacing him with Joss Whedon back in 2017. And with a runtime of just over 4 hours in total, it goes without saying that Snyder made some intense changes to the script. But has his version of Justice League ruined things for fans? Or have these changes had a positive change on the future of the DC Extended Universe? Well, whether you're a fan of Justice League or just want to know more about the various differences between Snyder and Whedon's cut, you've come to the right place, as we're about to explore whether these changes were essentially good or bad for the future of DC. So strap yourselves in and get ready for an informative ride, as things are about to get exciting. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss out on any of the new videos we post. Number 1. A fleshed out Superman. First up on our list is Clark Kent, known to the majority of fans as Superman, and it goes without saying that Snyder made a massive amount of changes to his overall story arc. The movie even started differently by reiterating just how important the death of Superman was for the future of the film. As we see him get stabbed by Doomsday, his cries echo out around him in waves of energy. We then follow these waves across the globe, reaching far-off lands such as Atlantis and Themyscira. Last but not least, the audience witnesses that the mother boxes actually activate upon hearing this cry of the Man of Steel, showing that his death really was a beacon for invading forces. With Clark dead, the mother boxes send a signal out to Darkseid, who decides to allow Steppenwolf the opportunity to collect them and bring destruction to Earth. Suffice it to say, the death of Superman was always the start of this conflict, but Whedon's version didn't make that clear at all. This also explains why it was so important to bring Superman back to life. He's the key to the anti-life equation after all. And when it came to his big resurrection, Barry Allen was given a much bigger job than originally thought. Harnessing more energy than we thought possible, which we'll explain a little bit later, Clark was brought back to life and ended up taking on the rest of the Justice League as he did in the previous version. But this is where we get to our first negative point of the Snyderverse. There was something gritty about Superman's original lines to Batman when he mentioned that the superhero wouldn't let him live and wouldn't let him die. And when Batman responded that the world needed Superman, Clark grabbed him by the head and started squeezing, claiming that the world definitely didn't need Bruce Wayne. It showed that Superman remembered everything that Bruce had done to him throughout Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, whereas Snyder's version saw none of this really happening. Instead, this fight was replaced by Batman bringing Lois Lane to the resurrection site, causing Clark to take her in his arms and fly away. But considering how the ending of the film was very much changed, this makes a lot of sense. Snyder needed to establish just how important Lois is to Superman, and how he'd snap upon her death in the Injustice story arc. The Man of Steel was also allowed to wear his black costume that was previously said by Warner Bros. To be far too dark for the DCEU. This is comic accurate, and represents the solar suit that he had to wear upon being resurrected to help his body heal. Remember, Superman gets his power from the sun, so it makes sense that he would get the most out of a black suit. And it must be said that his costume change was perfect for representing how he as a character had essentially been changed by the resurrection, and how the loss of Lois later on would bring the Injustice story arc about. Oh, and last but not least, we just had to mention that added scene where Superman looks up at Steppenwolf and uses his ice breath to freeze his axe, stating, "I'm not impressed." That moment alone made the Snyder Cut absolutely worth it, and it's the first time we've ever seen Superman use this power outside of the comics. Brilliant. Number 2. The power of Barry Allen. The Whedon version of Justice League finally introduced the audience to Barry Allen, otherwise known as the Flash. But this introduction left a sour taste in our mouths since Barry wasn't really given much credit. He was depicted as a scared boy who had no idea how to use any of his powers. In fact, the argument can be made that the character was merely included for some comic relief, which seemed pretty out of place when considering the dark material that the film was actually covering. Suffice it to say, many fans of The Flash were devastated by the portrayal of their favorite character, who's considered to be one of the most powerful superheroes in the DC comic verse. The man is faster than Superman after all, and he can use his speed to phase shift and time travel. So where was any of this when Steppenwolf attacked? This was just one of the complaints left by fans when critiquing the original. And as it turns out, Snyder listened by making Barry one of the reasons behind the successes of the Justice League in the end. We see how much power he really has by the scene just prior to Superman's resurrection. Just before he touches the mother box, we see it rise up rather than fall, showing that even then he had a handle on time travel. But this was nothing compared to the speed he ran towards the end of the movie, which allowed him to go back far enough in time to get a hand on Victor, allowing him to gain access to the mainframe of the Trinity. And it goes without saying that this scene came as a massive shock to fans who marveled at the destroyed world slowly mending itself as Barry moved his way back in time to before the explosion killed the rest of his friends. Finally, Barry was given the respect he deserved, and that was all thanks to Snyder's vision. Number 3. Cyborg became a necessary component of the film. Another massive change came in the form of Victor Stone, otherwise known as Cyborg, who really didn't feature much when it came to the original version of Justice League. This was a strange choice for Whedon though, as the story revolved around the collection and the use of the mother boxes, with Cyborg having been made from one in the past. so of course he should have played a prominent role in the film. He was, however, after all, the only character who had a solid understanding of the technology that drove these boxes. So when Zack Snyder was brought back onto the scene, he decided to revitalize the scenes he had previously shot, expanding on the story of Victor Stone. Audiences were treated to flashbacks of him playing football and battling with the notion that he's now nothing more than a cybernetic monster. We also see how he finds solace in the Justice League, who help him become the hero that the world needs him to be. And lastly, fans came to appreciate how in the end it was him who was given the job of hacking into the mother boxes and refusing to give in to their tempting demands. How he was almost completely cut from the original version, we have no idea. Number 4. The appearance of Darkseid. The visual change of Steppenwolf in the Snyder Cut was obviously a high point for the majority of fans, but for us it was the actual appearance of Darkseid that made us jump in excitement. The Big Bad has been the #1 villain of the Justice League for so many years in the comic verse, so to actually see him on screen felt like a dream come true. Much better than what we saw in the original cut, where the villain was merely mentioned by name. We also saw what Darkseid looked like centuries ago before he was able to obtain the power of the Omega, resulting in him getting beaten back by the heroes of old. This entire fight scene was introduced in the Snyder Cut, and the Snyder Cut alone, showing why Darkseid wanted to take over the Earth in the first place. You see, the anti-life equation is household in the bedrock of our planet and can be used to take over the multiverse, which has always been Darkseid's plan. Not only was this great for explaining why Darkseid was so hell-bent on taking over the Earth, it also explained why he sent his envoy Steppenwolf to the planet as a tester. He was almost killed when he last arrived on Earth after all, and needed some way to figure out whether Steppenwolf was worth keeping around or not after his betrayal. Talk about killing two birds with one stone. It's crazy to think how all of this was missing from the Whedon cut, but explains why the previous version didn't make much sense, all things considered. But Warner Brothers has said on many occasions that this version of Justice League is not considered to be canon, making the Injustice story arc nothing more than a dream. And if this is indeed the case, then it can be said that Snyder's cut has actually ruined Justice League for fans, as you simply can't get better than the Injustice story arc that Snyder set up. But what do you think? Be sure to let us know in the comments section down below.